Story 1. Fall in love at first sight. The moment when you understand that what you thought was impossible is possible. Story 2. In New England in winter, we had a really hard freezing rain one night. The next day was sunny, and I went early to a hilly and heavily forested park. I was the only one there. Every branch and twig had over a quarter-inch sheath of ice. The light shining through the ice created bright rainbow colors, which shifted like a kaleidoscope with every step. Just moving a few feet could take minutes as I watched the colors shifting, not just near me, but on every surface for hundreds of feet around. I have never experienced anything remotely close to it. Story 3. Hitting a home run over the fence with a wooden bat in Little League was an unforgettable experience. The ball was thrown right into my sweet spot, and I made perfect contact. I did not feel any bat sting. There are very few sounds more satisfying than the crack of a wooden bat and knowing it came from your swing. Watching the ball fly until I could no longer see it was one of the greatest things I have ever witnessed. I felt like I was floating while running the bases. This was the first and only home run I ever hit before I quit baseball as a high school freshman. Story 4. Have you ever cooked a meal that made you feel proud, and others who tasted it complimented you? That is an amazing feeling. Story 5. Trauma therapy completely changed me as a person, as well as my outlook on life and relationships with others. Story 6. Leaving the failing school system permanently after experiencing bullying and abuse from students and teachers. Story 7. One thing that comes to mind is sitting up when I was sore after sleeping for a while. My entire body cracked, and I instantly felt completely better. Story 8. Swimming at night in bioluminescent water, each stroke glowing electric blue, felt like drifting through a galaxy. I still think about it whenever life gets heavy. Story 9. Making my daughter squeal when I told her she is beautiful. Making your children happy is a different kind of joy. Story 10. Walking into a real 100% vintage store. Being into vintage 1900s to 1950s clothing and living in a small country community where the nearest suit store only sells cheap polyester garbage. Finally seeing the real deal was amazing. Story 11. The 7 to 8 years I had with my late Pomeranian Rusty were special. He was there with me through all my milestones. Finishing middle school, graduating high school, starting community college, and he helped me stay sane through the first half of the coronavirus disease lockdowns. I still miss him even 5 years after he crossed the Rainbow Bridge. Story 12. The complete love and acceptance of my wife. There is no one in my life around whom I have been more vulnerable, and she has never batted an eye at supporting me and fully accepting me for who I am. Story 13. The moment the doctor lifted my baby to bring her into the world via cesarean section. I wasn't a crier and never thought I would cry, but I couldn't help it. I have never felt such pure joy and love as in that moment. Story 14. A year ago, I had the opportunity to lead an entire group. That feeling and sense of authority made me feel alive. Eventually, we earned the first prize. Now, I crave more such opportunities. Story 15. Trauma therapy to process my post-traumatic stress disorder. It was such an intense feeling, slowly feeling it lose its grip over me and being able to feel at ease in my own home without having panic attacks when trying to sleep. It is by far the hardest thing I have ever done in my life, but also the most rewarding. Story 16. Family actually being proud of me for becoming sober from drugs and alcohol and finally getting my life together. When you are the black sheep of the family, you tend to receive the most judgment and the least amount of encouragement and positive reinforcement because you are seen as the problem child. To be fair, I was that younger brother who never applied himself at anything. So when I finally got genuine positive reinforcement and encouragement for my progress, it made me realize who in my family truly cared about me despite my issues. It also made me realize that I am the poster child for seeking attention. Story 17. If I could pick just one, it would probably be a Linkin Park concert in 2017, one of the very last shows before Chester died literally a few days later. I will forever be grateful I had the opportunity to see them in the original lineup, even though I am looking forward to seeing them with Emily too. Story 18. By chance, I reconnected with the person who got away from my youth. I never seriously expected to see her again, but we got back together in the most epic relationship and have been married for almost a decade now. Story 19, waking up to sex. Obviously, this is something that is consented to the night before. It is amazing. It has happened twice in my life. Once after passing out drunk in a buddy's guest bedroom, and another time was just a regular day. The only thing that sucks is the morning breath, but I just don't open my mouth. Story 20, becoming a grandparent. I was just in a kind of status until she was born, and everybody said it changed me for the better. Now I have two, and it is even better. Story 21. It's a toss-up between hugging my wife and her hugging me back, loving on my cats, certain types of weather, playing in a band, going on nice vacations, and eating at Michelin star restaurants. Story 22. I was loved by the sweetest, most beautiful, strongest, most lovable, and most mature girl. I was loved by one person whom I will always admire in my life. I was loved by one person whom I will never forget. Like never. When I have my first daughter, I will name her after my first love. Ever since I met her, my life has changed completely. I truly fell in love with her. I wish she comes back. Amen. Story 23. Flying first class to St. Barth's for my 16th birthday and again for my first honeymoon. Ego aside, it felt good to be catered to and treated like a demigod. Story 24. I have had many good experiences in life for which I am grateful, but I still believe the best is yet to come. Good luck and God bless. Story 25. My wife and I did not take a big honeymoon right after our wedding, but we spent a few days in Colorado, which was a first for both of us. We spent a day climbing Pikes Peak, and by the time we reached the summit, we were overwhelmed. It was my first time really seeing the Rocky Mountains. It also helped that I was feeling very relaxed. We had our dog with us, who is now probably too old for that much hiking, but he loved it. I was also starting a new job a few weeks later. It was a perfect moment. I was a little scared, but in an adventurous way. The future seemed mysterious but exciting. Other than that, all I felt was love and wonder. A year later, we took a make-up honeymoon to Portugal. We spent my birthday at a beautiful castle on a sunny day. It was a more uncommon experience and felt almost as good as that Colorado trip. Story 26. Off the top of my head, it has to be tandem skydiving. There was a calm in the chaos of hurtling to the ground. I got to enjoy the experience, so I did not have to focus on the parachute. When I took skydiving lessons, it was more chaotic. Story 27. I had a 6-month-long anxiety crisis last year. When it resolved, the following week was incredible. I guess the idea that humans primarily feel contrasts applies here. Story 28. Many close ones. Skydiving. Swimming in the Amazon and encountering 2 electric eels. Getting launched off an aircraft carrier. Story 29. Felt an attraction immediately to an interviewee when I was the interviewer. I hired her to get to know her better. Now we are living together, going strong, and still in love. Story 30. I camped in the desert last spring with my friend. We hiked down a remote canyon to a hot springs area, took mushrooms, got naked, and explored the area. Story 31. Everything. Life is amazing. You are a collection of electric cells that get to do things like interface with the universe, move a rock, or converse with other people. Food, vision, sex. There are amazing experiences out there. Then you put some complex systems together and create life, nurture it, watch it, absorb, learn, and teach that life. Story 32. At the hospital for hours due to a difficult birth. Suddenly, in the middle of the night, the doctors decide it is time for an emergency cesarean section. They have me follow behind them, and by the time I get set up in a gown, it is all over. I do not go into the operating room with my wife. I go into the adjacent room where they take the baby. The doctor comes in with my son, examines him for a few seconds, then wraps him up and hands him to me, essentially saying, "Hold this a moment." He takes my phone, snaps a picture of me holding him, and then returns to my wife's room. He tells me she is doing fine and will be back shortly. I have around 15 to 20 minutes alone with my newborn son. Combined with the rush of the moment and being told everything is going well, I do not know if I will ever be able to put that time into words. Story 33. Living a clean life, being present in my life, and practicing gratitude. Loving God is the only true pleasure. Other delights turn bitter. Story 34. Falling in love with someone who loves you back. Then, after years of struggling with the pain of that person leaving you and thinking you will never feel that happy again, meeting someone who proves you wrong. That just happened with me. And though I do not know if it will work out because she lives an ocean away, it has been years since I have felt this optimistic about myself and my future. Story 35. I'm glad so many people have such diverse experiences. My mind went to physical pleasure and drugs, but I would now like to change it to becoming a father. Story 36. My occasional visits to the suburban home of my mother's friend during my childhood. This is rather long, so please bear with me. My mother was best friends with a woman from long before either of them were married and had children. After marriage, my mother's friend lived with her husband and children in a colonial house in the suburbs. They were happy, living the ideal middle-class lifestyle in a middle-class home in the middle-class suburbs. Meanwhile, my own life was taking a turn for the worse. My parents split up when I was very young, around 5 or 6 years old. My mother got custody of us. If that was not bad enough, she had severe mental problems and turned on us. She became very mean and abusive, both verbally and physically, yelling and screaming almost every day when she wasn't hitting us. Still, a few times a year we would visit my mother's friend in the suburbs and spend the whole day there. My mother would be on her absolute best behavior during these visits. My mother's friend had no idea what my mother was really like. Raised in an abusive, dysfunctional home, I turned to watching a lot of television for escape and comfort. My favorite shows were daily syndicated reruns of classic sitcoms. My favorites portrayed happy families living in nice, happy homes. The home of my mother's friend was the closest real-life example of those families I had ever experienced. When one stepped inside their home, the atmosphere was one of happiness, love, joy, serenity, and contentment. The children of my mother's friend were happy and well-adjusted, raised in a kind, loving home. Like the families on television, they had a private house with a grassy front lawn, a backyard to play in, wall-to-wall carpeting, a fireplace, and a dog. I was so enamored with these people and how they lived that I studied them as best I could. I wanted to bottle up their secret to happiness and bring it back to my sad, abusive home, hoping it would transform my life. For example, I was allowed to explore any part of the first floor and the basement, where they had a recreation room, but I was not allowed upstairs where their bedrooms were. Frustrated, I decided to sneak up to the second floor one day. My mother's friend almost caught me, asking what I was doing. I pointed at the small bookcase on the landing, saying I wanted to see the books. She said that was fine and left the room. As soon as she was gone, I went up the remaining stairs. The bedroom doors were wide open. Inside, there were neatly made beds and dressers, but no clutter at all. There were no pictures or decorations on the walls, no books, toys, or anything else. Only beds and dressers. This surprised me because in my room and those of my friends, there was always clutter. Books, toys, records, posters, photos. I never looked in their closets or drawers. I just stood at the entrances and looked inside, except once when I took a few steps inside a bedroom before stepping back out. Whatever their secret to happiness and normalcy was, I couldn't figure it out. I hoped to absorb it into my skin and carry it back to my unhappy home, but I just couldn't get a reading on them. Saddened that I had failed, I went back downstairs. To everyone else, this family seemed ordinary, just an average middle-class family living in an average home in the suburbs. But to me, they and their home were something truly special. At night, after we were sent to bed, my sister and I would stay up talking about how great my mother's friend's home was. The best, happiest memories of my childhood and my life were the times I spent visiting my mother's friend's home. Story 37. Marrying my wife. I have social anxiety. I hate being the center of attention. Usually, standing up in front of a group of people with all eyes on me would be my worst nightmare. But no, I wasn't nervous. I had no doubts. All my focus was on her. It was the happiest moment of my life. Story 38. Independence. I have learned things about myself and become a version of myself that the version from just 3 years ago would be so proud of. Story 39. Birth of my daughter. Nothing before that mattered. The first time I held her, all I could do was stare at her little face. Everything she does makes me proud to be her father. The day she got in the car and said she made district chorus blew my mind because I didn't know she even auditioned. Then she joined the drama group and did plays throughout middle and high school. She is going to move away to college soon. She is going to be an anthropologist, and I honestly don't know how I am going to handle it. I'm going to miss seeing her every day and our Starbucks dates. But she is destined for great things. Story 40. 4 months of difficult work and chaos. I arrived at an all-inclusive resort in Mexico in the middle of a hurricane. I was initially disappointed but then proceeded to sleep for 12 hours, occasionally waking to monitor the storm. I felt like a new person. It was as though those 4 months were erased by a hurricane-fueled nap. 10 out of 10 recommend. Story 41. The day I became an emergency medical technician, dispatcher, or when I made it on the civil service examination list to become a police officer. Story 42. Happily married 21 soon, years, and we have 2 children, ages 14 and 16. Even when work is difficult, I remind myself that I have a good family. Story 43. Going on vacation to a historic race car event at Sonoma Raceway. I drove down the Pacific Coast Highway from Aberdeen, Washington to where Highway 1 and Highway 101 split in California. I camped at the racetrack, and it was amazing all 3 days. I did not want to return to normal life. V10 Formula 1 cars, big block McLaren Can-Am cars, 2 minis, and ragtime racers that required a co-driver to hand crank the fuel pump. Story 44. The successful birth of your first child is hard to explain, but in my opinion, that is the definition of life purpose, assuming you choose to have a child. You will never feel that again. Those few minutes are truly bliss. Story 45. Those laughs that leave you with abdomen and jaw pain. Those that leave you crying and almost peeing on the ground. I am the happiest woman in the world when someone makes me laugh like that. Story 46. Aside from obvious events like childbirth and marriage, I would say the cheeseburger I had before watching The Fellowship of the Ring on its release day was so good that I remember that day because of both the movie and the burger equally. That day was the best. Story 47. Finding someone who doesn't make me feel crazy. I grew up in an environment where my feelings and beliefs were always minimized. Nothing extreme, just treating people with respect. Then to realize that treating others with humanity was so radical but unpopular, I decided not to care. It was liberating to the point where being myself was okay. Story 48. A deep-fried chimichanga with sour cream and cheese on top, served with a helping of rice, beans, and avocado, tomato, and lettuce. I have been eating it since I was a child. It is not authentic, but I love Mexican food. Story 49. I remember as a teenager swimming out into Lake Michigan in the summertime and being completely suspended in the cold water, just my head bobbing up and down with the waves. I do not think I have ever felt that fulfilled or happy since. Story 50. Suppress, distract, blow out your mind, and zone out. Dissociate to complete oblivion and self-destruction. It is crazy addictive, unfortunately, and afterward, everything you tried to escape from is worse. Everything you wanted to relieve is even more intolerable. Story 51. There was a time I hung out with an attractive girl for 10 minutes before everyone else started arriving. The best 10 minutes ever. Story 52. My wedding. The moment I saw my wife come down the aisle, friends and family with us, many now gone. Otherwise, I got to live like a wealthy person in Paris for a couple of weeks. It was amazing. Story 53. I was driving a larger, heavier sport utility vehicle when I crashed into another car from the side. The last thing I saw was the girl in the driver's seat looking at me, screaming. I vividly remember that because the moments right before the impact went really slow, like a cinematic slow motion. I had a couple of scratches and my leg was hurt. But when I got out, no one was exiting the other car. It was very late at night, and this was a desolate, quiet road. I was unable to check on the driver for a few seconds because I was so scared I had killed someone. Finally, when I gained the courage to approach the car, I saw the woman in shock but alive and well. That was the best moment of my life, realizing no one died because of me. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.